My parents bartered with a local farmer, and they had their cows on our property, and every year we got half a cow, put it in our freezer. They bartered for that. We went across the street for a dozen eggs, and we walked up the hill to borrow a cup of sugar, and my mom had a garden right next to the house that we were all tasked with helping with. We were not rich, but we had a really high quality of life. And that's because resiliency was built into our culture and into our landscape. But that was Michigan, and home is San Antonio now. And I still need resiliency, and I still want quality of life. So, I'm going to talk to you about growing resiliency in San Antonio. And I want to talk to you about how we can build it together. How we can incorporate resiliency into our culture and into our landscape for your quality of life and for all of our neighbors' quality of life. I want you to join with me at Green Spaces Alliance. We are a small local nonprofit, and we have grand initiatives. We conserve open space. We engage the community, that's you. And we educate everybody who will listen. Because together, we can affect millions of people's lives, their quality of life. And hopefully, you've already heard about Green Spaces Alliance. But just in case you haven't, our Community Gardens program is an exemplar of our mission. You may know that we've worked with over 40 community garden sites throughout the San Antonio area, and you may guess that those gardens grow fruits and vegetables. But you may not know that there's a long list of benefits, as you can see up here on the screen. And those benefits include building resiliency into our culture and into our landscape. Let me explain a little bit. To me, quality of life is the sum of quality shelter, quality food, and quality water. And resilience is the sum of wisdom, stewardship, and adaptability. When we put quality of life and resilience together, we get quality of life for generations to come. Resilient practices are so much more powerful than sustainable practices. Resilient practices prepare us for change, any kind of change that comes our way, whether it's natural, economic, political, or just societal changes. At Green Spaces, we work towards resiliency, and we start from desire. Desire for quality of life. We work with nature. Mother Nature still has tons of guidance to give us, tons of resources to share, and environmental services abounding even right here in our urban environment. You know that green infrastructure is an environmental service, and did you know that community gardens are green infrastructure? And when we build community gardens, we are employing natural processes to work for us. Community gardens working for us. At Green Spaces, we work to preserve open spaces, the remaining open spaces in and around San Antonio. At Green Spaces, we work through education. We employ tools like workshops, bike tours, mentorship, service learning to get you from green behind the ears to green thumbs. And we work to preserve water, our very most precious resource. Because without water, we can't have food. And without food, we can't have quality of life. In our landscape, we can have things like community gardens, food forests, pollinator parkways, kind of like what Ron Finley was talking about, linear greenways, urban orchards, and urban farms. Together, these built environment features help us build resiliency. They help us improve our quality of life. And by distributing these features all over San Antonio, it means that people all over San Antonio have access to quality of life. They're empowered to change the resiliency of San Antonio. And a lot of people say, but how? We live in a very semi-arid climate. And we have a huge generation gap, huge being that our grandmothers knew how to garden, but our grandchildren don't have a clue. I believe we can become empowered. We shall be empowered to change our quality of life and to improve the resiliency of our city. To do so, we need to start with the soil. Soil is our foundation. At Green Spaces, we teach you how to compost. We take all the kitchen scraps and the cuttings from the garden and the extra leaves, and we mix them together, and we make an organic material that's full of nutrients and high texture so that it can hold lots more water. Those soils and those plants invite beneficial insects, and we also mimic nature to hold the soil in place once we've built it up. Another essential feature to gardening is the sun. You gotta have appropriate solar exposure. You can't have too much and you can't have too little. So at Green Spaces, we look for sites that are skirted by big shade trees. And we avoid working where there's heritage trees that apply deep, dark shade to both front yards and backyards. We site our gardens so that they get cool morning sun coming from the east, and we shelter our gardens from the harsh afternoon sun that comes from the west. In the winter, we plant thinly so that the soil gets lots of solar exposure and so that the ground heats up faster for those little seedlings. And in the summer, we plant thickly so that the soil is not exposed, because when the soil is exposed, it heats up, and that cooks both moisture and life from the soil. Some claim that it's impossible to grow food here, that it's just too hard without tons and tons of water. And the truth is, we can and we do. We plant seasonally. We plant broccoli in the winter, and therefore it avoids the summer heat that will just make it cook. And we plant okra in the summer because it really can't stand the cold. We encourage the selection of native plants, and at the Denver Heights Community Garden, there are a number of native plants there that are food producing. We encourage arrangement of the plants so that some plants support others, like in the Three Sisters Garden, and that others protect tall plants protect smaller plants from the beating sun. We also do a lot of mulching. So if you want to volunteer, you just come on out and we'll put you to work mulching. Because mulching helps keep water in the soil and weeds out of the garden. Still, lots of other people worry about where the water comes from, because you can't have a garden without water. You just need it. So at GSA, we use nature services like the drip line of a tree. We're working with nature. We facilitate the capture of water from structures where it directs water to cisterns, and curb cuts that direct water to berms and swales. We encourage the pooling of water on the site so that it stays with us where we need it longer. Between our deluges and our droughts come in the most inconvenient patterns. What did you say? So when drought returns, we must return to our education. We must return. We need to get dirty, number one. You need to get your hands dirty. And when you feel that the soil is cool, then it's moist enough for now and you don't need to water. We water the roots. Don't bother with spraying the leaves. That equates to evaporation. Water where the plant can drink the liquids. We encourage the use of oyas and drip irrigation because that helps keep water in the soil where it's needed. And when we see that very scary map that shows the drought across our continent in red, we need to remember that we need to keep growing local. We cannot have control over how the spinach in California is watered. We can only control how the water is used here, where we garden. And the water that's used here either goes back into our bellies or back into our water cycle. We can't control when deluge or drought are going to come, but we can control what happens in between, especially if we build resiliency into our built environment, into our culture, and into our landscape. Community gardens do this for San Antonio. So I ask you, can we grow resilient here? I want you to feel empowered. I hope you feel empowered to grow resiliency for quality of life here in San Antonio. It is in our culture to do so, and it is in our landscape to be able to. And when our world keeps changing and times seem tough, remember that Green Spaces Alliance is here working for San Antonio, for you and for all of your neighbors, fulfilling the desire for high quality of life. Thank you.